Olivia Henderson stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror of Artisan's Brew, one of Seattle's trendiest coffee shops turned evening wine bars. Rain pattered against the windows outside, typical for an October evening in the Pacific Northwest. She adjusted her forest green blouse, tucked a strand of curly brown hair behind her ear, and took a deep breath. "You can do this," she whispered to herself. 1 hour. That's all Sarah asked for. 1 hour and you're free. The bathroom door swung open as another woman entered, giving Olivia a curious look. Embarrassed at being caught talking to herself, Olivia quickly washed her hands and exited, navigating through the crowded space back to her table. Her blind date, Jake something, hadn't arrived yet, which only added to her anxiety. Sarah, her roommate since college and self-appointed matchmaker, had been insisting for months that Olivia needed to get back out there after her breakup with Daniel 8 months ago. Olivia had finally relented, if only to stop Sarah's constant badgering. "He's perfect for you," Sarah had insisted, scrolling through her phone to show a somewhat blurry photo of a man with dark hair. "He works with my boyfriend's brother. Very successful, super smart, and actually nice." Olivia checked her watch. 7:13. He was officially 13 minutes late. She sipped her Cabernet and considered the socially acceptable waiting period before she could leave without feeling guilty. 30 minutes seemed excessive. 15 felt right. Just as she was calculating how many more minutes remained in her self-imposed waiting period, a man approached her table, slightly out of breath. "Olivia?" he asked, his voice deeper than she'd expected. She looked up. The man before her wore faded jeans and a plain navy blue sweater that had seen better days. His dark hair was slightly windblown, and he had a 5 o'clock shadow that suggested he hadn't bothered to shave before their date. His only accessory was a worn leather watch that had clearly been through a lot. "Yes," she replied, trying to hide her immediate disappointment. This was not what Sarah had promised when she'd used the word successful. "I'm Jake Wilson. Sorry I'm late. Parking was a nightmare, and then I got caught in that downpour." He gestured vaguely toward the window where rain now hammered against the glass. "It's fine," Olivia said, though it wasn't. Punctuality mattered to her. Jake settled into the chair across from her, setting his phone face down on the table. "So, Sarah's told me a lot about you." "All good things, I hope," Olivia replied automatically, reaching for her standard first date script. "Actually, she said you're intimidatingly passionate about your work, that you're the most dedicated person she knows." Olivia blinked, surprised by the unexpected response. "Oh, well, that's nice of her." A server approached their table, and Jake ordered a beer, something local and craft that Olivia had never heard of. Not wine, not cocktails. Beer, from a place that prided itself on its wine selection. "So what do you do?" Olivia asked once the server left, hoping Sarah's comment about him being very successful hadn't been completely off base. "Oh, this and that," Jake replied vaguely, glancing around the room as if assessing the space. "I work with computers mostly. What about you? Sarah mentioned something about a community center." Olivia immediately brightened. Her work was the one topic that never failed to animate her. "Yes, I'm the program director at Eastside Community Center. We provide after-school programs, adult education classes, and resources for underserved communities. We're especially focused on closing the digital divide for kids who don't have access to technology at home." "That sounds important," Jake said, nodding thoughtfully as the server returned with his beer. "Is it a large operation?" Olivia's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. "Not as large as we need to be. We're always fighting for funding. Actually, we just lost a major grant we were counting on, so I'm scrambling to find alternatives before we have to cut our coding program for middle schoolers." Jake took a sip of his beer. "That's tough. Have you considered corporate partnerships? A lot of tech companies have community outreach initiatives." "We've tried," Olivia sighed, "but without connections to the right people, it's hard to get past the initial email phase. Everyone wants to support digital literacy, in theory, but when it comes to actually writing checks. She trailed off, suddenly aware she was veering into work complaints. Sorry, I don't mean to dump all this on you within the first 10 minutes. No, it's interesting, Jake insisted, leaning forward slightly. What about crowdfunding? Or maybe restructuring the program to make it more appealing to investors? Olivia raised an eyebrow. This man in his shabby sweater was giving her fundraising advice? We've explored those options. The reality is that sustainable funding requires sustained interest from donors with deep pockets, not one-time campaigns. Jake nodded, looking thoughtful. Makes sense. An awkward silence settled between them. Olivia took another sip of her wine, searching for a neutral topic. So how do you know Sarah's boyfriend? College friends, Jake replied. We were roommates sophomore year. At UW, Olivia asked, referring to the University of Washington. A slight hesitation. No, Stanford, actually. Olivia nearly choked on her wine. Stanford. The disconnect between his education and his apparent lack of career success confused her. Perhaps he'd majored in something unmarketable, like medieval poetry. What did you study? She asked, genuinely curious now. Computer science, he answered, then quickly redirected. What about you? Where did you go to school? UW, she replied. Public health major, non-profit management minor. That tracks with your current work, Jake observed. The conversation continued in fits and starts. Jake asked thoughtful questions about her work, but whenever Olivia tried to learn more about him, he deflected or gave vague answers. When she inquired about his hobbies, he mentioned hiking and tinkering with tech projects. When she asked where he lived, he simply said, north of the city. By the time they'd been talking for 40 minutes, Olivia felt she knew almost nothing about the man sitting across from her. What she did know was that he didn't seem particularly ambitious or passionate about anything. For someone with a Stanford education, he appeared remarkably unmotivated, the opposite of everything Olivia valued. Her work consumed her because she believed in making a difference. Jake seemed to drift through life without purpose. I should probably be going soon, Olivia said finally, after another painful lull in conversation. Early morning tomorrow. Something like disappointment flickered across Jake's face. Of course, I understand. As Olivia gathered her purse and jacket, Jake reached for the check that the server had discreetly placed on their table. We can split it, Olivia offered, reaching for her wallet. No, please, let me get this, Jake insisted, already placing his credit card on the check without even looking at the total. Olivia hesitated, then nodded. Thank you. As they waited for the server to return, Jake asked, So, would you be interested in doing this again sometime? The question caught Olivia off guard. Had he not felt the awkwardness, the clear lack of chemistry between them? Look, Jake, she began, choosing her words carefully. You seem nice, but I don't think we're a good match. Because, he prompted, his expression unreadable. Maybe it was the wine, maybe it was the frustration of a wasted evening, maybe it was the crushing stress of potentially having to tell 20 eager middle schoolers that their coding program was being cut. Whatever the reason, Olivia's carefully constructed filter failed her, because I need someone who matches my energy, my ambition, someone with drive and purpose. I work incredibly hard every day, trying to make the world a little better, and I deserve someone who brings that same passion to their own life. She took a breath, knowing she should stop, but unable to. I deserve better than someone who's coasting. The moment the words left her mouth, Olivia regretted them. Jake's face remained impassive, but something in his eyes hardened. You're right, he said quietly as the server returned with his card. You do deserve someone better. He signed the receipt with a quick scrawl, leaving a tip that Olivia couldn't see. Then he stood, nodding politely. Good luck with your community center, Olivia. I hope you find the funding you need. And with that, he walked away, leaving Olivia sitting alone, a knot of guilt forming in her stomach. She hadn't meant to be so harsh, But at the same time, wasn't honesty better than pretending there might be something there when there clearly wasn't? Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the streetlights as Olivia began her walk home. She pulled out her phone and saw 3 texts from Sarah. "How's it going with Jake?" "He's great, right? Call me the minute you get home." Olivia groaned, knowing Sarah would be disappointed. As she turned the corner toward her apartment building, a sleek black Tesla silently glided past her, water spraying from its tires. The driver was obscured by tinted windows, but something about the car made her pause. She shook her head and continued walking, already crafting the speech she would give Sarah about why blind dates were a terrible idea and why she was perfectly fine being single. What Olivia didn't know, as she climbed the steps to her apartment, was that her worst blind date was about to become much more complicated than she could have possibly imagined. Jake Wilson drove his Tesla in silence, windshield wipers clearing the last drops of rain as Seattle's skyline glimmered in the distance. He tapped his fingers against the steering wheel, Olivia's words echoing in his mind. "I deserve better," if only she knew. He pulled into the underground garage of his Lake Washington waterfront home, the security system recognizing his vehicle and automatically opening the gate. As the car rolled to a stop, Jake sat motionless for a moment, staring at the concrete wall in front of him. Dating had become a minefield since his company's acquisition 2 years ago. Women either recognized his name immediately and treated him like a winning lottery ticket, or they discovered his worth later and suddenly found him infinitely more attractive than they had 5 minutes earlier. It was why he'd started downplaying his success, dressing casually, wearing his old watch, and being purposefully vague about his work. He wanted someone to like Jake Wilson, not his bank account. His phone buzzed with a text from Nate, Sarah's boyfriend. "How'd it go with Olivia?" Jake typed back, "She told me she deserves better." Direct quote. 3 dots appeared immediately, followed by, "Shit. Sorry, man. Sarah's going to be mortified." "Don't tell her," Jake replied. "Not worth the drama." He slipped his phone into his pocket and took the private elevator up to his main living area. The house, a modern architectural showcase of glass, steel, and warm woods, automatically lit up as he entered, smart home system detecting his presence. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed Lake Washington stretching before him, city lights twinkling on the opposite shore. Jake loosened his watch and tossed it onto the kitchen island. He'd bought it during his sophomore year at Stanford, before the sleepless coding nights, before the startup, before the bidding war that had ended with his company, SecureNet, being acquired for $340 million. He grabbed a sparkling water from the refrigerator and walked over to his home office. Despite the late hour, he had work to do. The new security protocol his team was developing had hit a snag, and he'd promised to review the code before tomorrow's meeting. As he settled into his ergonomic chair, his thoughts drifted back to Olivia. There had been something refreshing about her directness, her passion. When she spoke about the community center, her entire demeanor transformed, eyes bright, hands animated, completely present in the moment. Jake opened his laptop and almost without thinking typed Eastside Community Center Seattle into the search bar. The website that loaded was functional but dated, clearly built on a limited budget. He clicked through the pages, reading about their programs and mission. A banner across the top announced, "Help save our coding program. Donation goal, $50,000. Below it, a progress bar showed they'd raised just over $8,000. Jake clicked the donate button, hesitating at the form that appeared. He could solve their problem with a single transaction, a drop in the bucket for him. But something held him back. Olivia's pride, perhaps. The way she'd looked at him with disappointment when she thought he lacked ambition. Instead of completing the donation, he closed the browser and turned to his work, pushing thoughts of passionate program directors with curly hair out of his mind. "You said what to him?" Sarah's voice reached a pitch Olivia had never heard before. It was the following morning, and they sat at their small kitchen table, mugs of coffee between them. Olivia winced at her roommate's volume. I know, it was awful of me, Olivia admitted, stirring another spoonful of sugar into her coffee. I just snapped. Sarah ran her hands through her blonde hair in exasperation. Olivia, do you have any idea who Jake Wilson is? A Stanford grad who apparently hasn't done much with his degree, Olivia guessed, the guilt from last night mixing with defensiveness. He's the founder of SecureNet, the security software company that got bought for hundreds of millions 2 years ago. He's literally on the 30 under 30 list. Olivia's spoon clattered against her mug. What? Jake is worth something like $200 million, Sarah continued, pulling out her phone. Look. She thrust the screen toward Olivia, showing a business magazine article with a photo of Jake in a tailored suit at some tech conference. He looked different, clean-shaven, hair styled professionally, standing confidently at a podium, but it was unmistakably the same man she'd dismissed the night before. This can't be right, Olivia whispered, taking the phone to scroll through the article. He was wearing a sweater with a hole in the sleeve? Because he doesn't flaunt his wealth. Nate says he's super down to earth. He still codes with his team, drives an electric car because he cares about the environment, and donates like crazy to education initiatives. Sarah reclaimed her phone, shaking her head. And you told this guy you deserved better. Olivia felt the blood drain from her face. Oh my God! Oh my God is right, Sarah agreed, taking a vindictive sip of her coffee. You told a millionaire tech genius and philanthropist that he wasn't ambitious enough for you. He was so vague about everything, Olivia protested weakly. He just said he worked with computers. Because the last 3 women he dated were only interested in his money. Olivia buried her face in her hands. I'm a terrible person. No, you're just clueless sometimes, Sarah sighed. What are you going to do? What can I do? Apologize. Sorry I said I deserve better than you. Turns out you're super rich, so I've reconsidered. Olivia groaned. That would make me sound even worse. Well, you better figure something out fast because he's on the board of the Pierce Foundation. Olivia's head snapped up. The Pierce Foundation. The one that gives that $100,000 grant for youth technology programs every year. The very same, Sarah confirmed. The grant that your community center has applied for 3 years, running without success. How do you know all this? Olivia demanded. Unlike you, I actually researched the guy before setting you up with him. I thought you two would be perfect together, both passionate about education and technology access. Sarah stood and carried her mug to the sink. But I guess we'll never know now. Olivia felt sick. Not only had she been incredibly rude to someone who didn't deserve it, but she might have also torpedoed any chance of her community center receiving vital funding. The Pierce Foundation grant could save their coding program and expand it to serve more students. I need to apologize, she decided, reaching for her phone. Sarah shook her head. You don't have his number. I never gave it to you, and you never asked. Then give it to me now. I can't. Nate made me promise not to interfere anymore. He says Jake was pretty hurt by what happened. Sarah, this isn't just about my love life anymore. This is about the community center, about the kids who need our program. Her roommate's expression softened slightly. Look, I understand, but forcing an apology won't help. If you really want to make amends, you'll have to find another way. Olivia stared out the window at the gray Seattle morning, mind racing. There had to be a solution, some way to fix this colossal misunderstanding. Her phone buzzed with an email notification. She glanced down to see a message from her assistant director, Marcos. Emergency. Pipe burst in the computer lab. Water damage to at least 3 machines, coming in early to assess. Perfect, Olivia muttered. Just perfect. She grabbed her jacket and bag, downing the last of her coffee. I have to go. Crisis at work. Speaking of work, Sarah called as Olivia headed for the door, isn't the Pierce Foundation's annual technology gala next Friday? Olivia froze. Yes, why? Because Jake Wilson always attends. A plan began forming in Olivia's mind. The community center couldn't afford tickets to the exclusive event, but Olivia knew someone who might be able to help. Her former college professor, Dr. Abigail Chen, now sat on several non-profit boards and frequently attended such functions. "I owe you for the worst blind date of my life," Olivia told Sarah before rushing out the door, "but you may have just given me a way to fix it." The Eastside Community Center was housed in a renovated school building in one of Seattle's historically underserved neighborhoods. When Olivia arrived, she found Marcos mopping water from the computer lab floor, while a maintenance worker examined the ceiling where the pipe had burst. "How bad is it?" she asked, setting down her bag and rolling up her sleeves. Marcos, a 25-year-old recent graduate with a perpetual look of optimism despite any circumstance, gave her a grim smile. "3 computers definitely fried. 2 others got splashed, but they might be salvageable once they dry out." Olivia surveyed the damage, calculating costs they couldn't afford. "The coding class starts Monday. We need at least 10 working stations." "I know," Marcos replied. "I called some places about rentals, but even the cheapest option would cost $400 a week, which we don't have," Olivia concluded. "Not if we want to keep the lights on," Marcos agreed. Olivia pulled out her phone and dialed Dr. Chen's number. After explaining the situation, both the water damage and her desperate need to attend the Pierce Foundation gala, she hung up with a glimmer of hope. Dr. Chen couldn't give her a ticket, but she could add Olivia as her +1. "Good news?" Marcos asked, noting her expression. "Potentially. I might have a lead on both funding and replacement computers, but I need to attend this gala next Friday. Can you handle things here if I leave early that day?" "Of course," he replied, "but these fancy galas usually require fancy dresses, right? Isn't that going to be expensive?" Olivia had already thought of that. "I'll borrow something from Sarah. She owes me." As they worked to salvage what they could from the computer lab, Olivia's mind kept returning to Jake Wilson. The contrast between his humble appearance at their date and the success she now knew he'd achieved fascinated her. She found herself wondering what else she might have misjudged about him. By late afternoon, they'd managed to dry out and restore one of the damaged computers, leaving them with a total of 8 functioning stations, still too short of what they needed. Olivia was updating their website's donation page with news of the water damage when she noticed something strange. The donation counter for their coding program had jumped from just over $8,000 to $10,000 even. "Marcos," she called out, "did we receive a large donation today?" He appeared in the doorway of her small office. "Not that I know of. Why?" Someone just donated $2,000 online, anonymously." "That's great," Marcos exclaimed. "Maybe one of the parents." "Maybe," Olivia agreed, though something told her it wasn't a parent. $2,000 wouldn't solve all their problems, but it would cover emergency computer rentals until they could properly replace the damaged equipment. As Olivia locked up the center that evening, exhausted from the day's crisis management, she couldn't shake the feeling that her worst blind date might somehow be connected to this stroke of good fortune. It was probably just wishful thinking, a way to ease her conscience about how rudely she'd behaved, but stranger things had happened. What she didn't realize was that across the city, Jake Wilson sat in his home office, a notification from his banking app confirming his anonymous donation to Eastside Community Center. He told himself it was because he believed in their mission, not because he couldn't get Olivia Henderson's passionate defense of her work out of his mind. Neither of them knew that the Pierce Foundation Gala would bring them face to face again, under circumstances neither could have anticipated, and neither suspected that their worst blind date was about to become much more complicated, in ways that would challenge everything they thought they knew about each other. The Pierce Foundation's annual technology gala transformed the Seattle Art Museum into a glittering showcase of wealth and innovation. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the main hall as Seattle's tech elite mingled, champagne flutes in hand, discussing million-dollar deals with casual nonchalance. Olivia stood at the entrance, feeling like an imposter in Sarah's borrowed dress, a floor-length emerald gown that complemented her brown skin and made her feel simultaneously elegant and entirely out of place. She clutched her small, beaded purse, inside which she'd placed carefully crafted note cards outlining the East Side Community Center's mission, impact statistics, and specific funding needs. Dr. Chen had warned her not to be too aggressive with potential donors, but Olivia knew this might be her only chance to save their coding program. "Olivia, there you are," Dr. Chen approached, resplendent in a silver pantsuit. "You look lovely. Come, let me introduce you to some people who might be interested in your work." For the next hour, Olivia shook hands, exchanged pleasantries, and delivered her well-rehearsed pitch to a blur of faces. Some seemed genuinely interested, others clearly tuned out after learning she wasn't attached to a venture-backed startup. No one had mentioned Jake Wilson, and Olivia hadn't spotted him among the crowds. She was just beginning to wonder if he might not attend after all, when she overheard his name at the bar. "Wilson's latest security protocol is revolutionary," a grey-haired man in an expensive suit was saying to his companion. "The government contracts alone will double SecureNet's value within 5 years. If he doesn't sell to Google first," his companion replied. "I heard they offered him $700 million last quarter. He turned it down flat, said he wasn't finished building yet." Olivia moved away, heart racing. $700 million. The scale of Jake's success was difficult to comprehend. She'd known he was wealthy, but this was another level entirely. She made her way toward a quieter corner of the event space, needing a moment to gather her thoughts. That's when she saw him. Jake stood near a large window overlooking Elliott Bay, deep in conversation with an older woman whose austere expression reminded Olivia of a university dean. Unlike their date, tonight he wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, and a subtle blue tie. His dark hair was neatly styled and he'd shaved. He looked every bit the successful tech entrepreneur, poised, confident, and completely at ease in surroundings that made Olivia want to hide behind a potted plant. As if sensing her gaze, Jake glanced in her direction. Their eyes met across the room. Olivia froze, unsure whether to approach or retreat. Jake's expression revealed nothing as he excused himself from his conversation and began walking toward her. "Miss Henderson," he said formally when he reached her, "I didn't expect to see you here." "Dr. Chen invited me as her guest," Olivia explained, her mouth suddenly dry. "I'm here representing East Side Community Center." Jake nodded, his expression still unreadable. "I see. How's the fundraising going?" "We're making progress," she said cautiously. "Actually, we received an anonymous $2,000 donation recently, which was tremendously helpful after a pipe burst and damaged some of our computers." Something flickered in Jake's eyes, but he simply said, "That's fortunate timing." An awkward silence stretched between them. Olivia knew she needed to apologize, but the crowded gala hardly seemed the appropriate setting. Before she could decide on the right words, Jake spoke again. "Would you excuse me? I need to speak with the foundation director before her speech." "Of course," Olivia replied, hiding her disappointment. "It was good to see you, Jake." He hesitated, then offered a small nod before walking away, leaving Olivia feeling like she'd missed a crucial opportunity. The remainder of the evening passed in a blur. Dr. Chen introduced Olivia to several more potential donors, including a retired tech executive who expressed genuine interest in the community center's work. But Olivia's thoughts kept returning to Jake, who remained visible across the room but never approached her again. When the formal program began, Olivia found herself seated at a table far from the stage where a succession of speakers praised the Pierce Foundation's contributions to bridging the digital divide. The foundation director, Martha Pierce herself, the severe-looking woman Olivia had seen speaking with Jake, announced this year's grant recipients. Olivia held her breath, when Martha reached the Youth Technology Grant category, but Eastside Community Center wasn't among the winners. Instead, the $100,000 award went to a robotics program in Tacoma. Disappointment settled in Olivia's chest. She'd known it was a long shot, especially after alienating Jake Wilson, but she'd still allowed herself to hope. As the formal program concluded and guests began to depart, Olivia thanked Dr. Chen for the invitation and headed for the coat check, eager to escape her sense of failure. She was waiting for her wrap when she felt someone approach. Olivia. She turned to find Jake standing beside her, his expression softer than earlier. "I heard East Side didn't get the grant this year," he said. "No," she admitted, "but the Tacoma program is doing important work too." Jake studied her for a moment. "Would you be willing to continue our conversation somewhere quieter? There's a cafe around the corner that should still be open." Surprised by the invitation, Olivia hesitated only briefly before nodding. "I'd like that." 20 minutes later, they sat across from each other at a small table in the back of a nearly empty cafe. Olivia had swapped her heels for the ballet flats she'd wisely tucked into her purse, and Jake had removed his tie. With these small concessions to comfort, some of the evening's formality began to dissolve. "I owe you an apology," Olivia said, deciding to address the elephant in the room directly. "What I said at the end of our date was unkind and unfair. I didn't know you, and I made assumptions that were completely wrong." Jake's expression remained neutral. "You've since learned who I am, I take it." Olivia felt her cheeks warm. "Sarah told me the morning after our date, but that's not why I'm apologizing. Even if you weren't successful by conventional standards, no one deserves to be dismissed the way I dismissed you." Jake was quiet for a moment, rotating his coffee cup between his hands. "I appreciate your honesty, both then and now. You're being very gracious about it." "Well," he said with the hint of a smile, "it's not the first time someone has misjudged me, though usually it's in the opposite direction, people assuming I'm worth talking to because of my bank account rather than assuming I'm not." Olivia winced. "That sounds equally awful." "It has its challenges," he acknowledged. "It's why I've started being intentionally vague about my work. I'd rather someone get to know me as a person first, before they learn about SecureNet." "I can understand that," Olivia said, though in my case it backfired spectacularly. This time Jake's smile was genuine. It did make for a memorable first impression. The tension between them eased slightly, and Olivia found herself relaxing into the conversation. "Since we're being honest, was that really your everyday attire at our date, or were you deliberately dressing down?" "A bit of both," he admitted. "The sweater is legitimately old, from before SecureNet took off. But yes, I do sometimes deliberately choose less flashy clothes when I'm trying to fly under the radar." "And the vague answers about your work?" That part's complicated," Jake said, leaning back in his chair. "I'm proud of what I've built, but I've learned that leading with 'I founded a successful tech company' tends to change the dynamic of a conversation immediately. People either want something from me, or they make assumptions about who I am based on headlines they've read." Olivia nodded, understanding dawning. "So you test people by being deliberately mysterious and seeing how they react?" "I wouldn't call it a test exactly," he replied, looking slightly uncomfortable with her framing. "More like creating space to be seen as a person rather than a resource." "And I failed spectacularly," Olivia concluded. "You were honest about what you want," Jake corrected. "There's value in that, even if the delivery was a bit harsh." They fell silent as the server refilled their coffee cups. Outside, Seattle's persistent drizzle created halos around the streetlights. "So," Jake said after a moment, "tell me more about what's happening at Eastside. You mentioned a burst pipe." Grateful for the change of subject, Olivia explained the water damage to their computer lab and the scramble to find replacements before classes resumed. "The anonymous donation helped us rent equipment for the short term, but we still need a more permanent solution." Jake's expression gave nothing away. "How many computers were damaged?" 5 total, but we managed to salvage 2. We're still 3 short of what we need for a full class. Jake seemed to be considering something. What if I could help? Help how? Olivia asked cautiously. SecureNet has dozens of perfectly good laptops that were just replaced in our last technology refresh. Corporate policy requires regular upgrades for security reasons, but the old machines are still excellent. They're scheduled to be donated anyway. I could direct some to Eastside. Olivia straightened in her chair. That would be incredible, but why would you help us after the way I treated you? Jake met her gaze directly. Because your work matters, Olivia. The digital divide is real, and programs like yours are essential to addressing it. My personal feelings don't change that fact. His words reminded Olivia of what Sarah had told her, that Jake genuinely cared about educational access and technology equity. Perhaps they had more in common than she'd initially realized. Thank you, she said sincerely. That would make a huge difference for our students. I'll have my assistant coordinate with you next week, Jake promised. We should be able to deliver at least 10 laptops, more than replacing what you lost. Olivia felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. The kids will be thrilled. Many of them don't have access to technology at home, so our lab is their only opportunity to develop these skills. What kind of coding do you teach them? Jake asked, seeming genuinely interested. We start with block-based programming to teach the concepts, then transition to Python for those who show aptitude and interest. Our goal isn't necessarily to create professional programmers, but to develop computational thinking skills they can apply in any field. As Olivia described their curriculum and the challenges her students faced, she watched Jake's expression grow increasingly engaged. He asked thoughtful questions about their teaching methods, offered suggestions from his own experience learning to code, and seemed genuinely impressed by what they'd accomplished with limited resources. You know, he said as their conversation wound down, there's something I've been wondering about. What's that? If you hadn't learned who I was after our date, if Sarah hadn't told you, would you ever have reached out to apologize? The question caught Olivia off guard with its directness. She considered it carefully. I'd like to say yes, she answered honestly. But I don't know. I was pretty convinced I was right about you. Jake nodded, accepting her candor. And now I think I made a lot of assumptions based on very little information, Olivia said. Which is ironic, because I hate when people do that about the communities we serve at Eastside. We all have blind spots, Jake observed. Some bigger than others, apparently, Olivia said with a self-deprecating smile. Jake glanced at his watch. It's getting late. Can I offer you a ride home? That's very kind, but I've already arranged a rideshare, Olivia replied, though she was touched by the offer. They walked together to the cafe exit. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets shining beneath the streetlights. Jake insisted on waiting with her until her ride arrived. I'm glad we had this conversation, he said as they stood beneath the cafe's awning. It was much more enjoyable than our first attempt. Definitely an improvement, Olivia agreed, though the bar was admittedly low. Jake laughed, a warm, genuine sound that made Olivia realize she hadn't heard it during their first meeting. When her rideshare pulled up, Jake opened the car door for her. I'll be in touch about those laptops. Thank you again, Olivia said, not just for the computers, but for giving me a chance to apologize properly. Good night, Olivia, he replied with a small smile. As her car pulled away, Olivia found herself looking back at Jake's figure on the sidewalk. Their conversation had revealed a depth and thoughtfulness she'd completely missed during their disastrous first meeting. She couldn't help but wonder what might have happened if she'd given him a fair chance from the beginning. What Olivia didn't know, as she headed home, was that Jake Wilson was wondering the exact same thing. The following Monday morning found Olivia in her office at Eastside Community Center, reviewing grant applications with renewed determination after the Pierce Foundation rejection. The weekend had passed without any word from Jake, and she'd begun to wonder if perhaps their cafe conversation had been more closure than new beginning. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcos. You need to come see this. Front entrance, now. Concerned, Olivia hurried through the center's hallways. When she reached the entrance, she stopped short at the sight that greeted her. Two men in secure net polo shirts stood beside a cart stacked with laptop boxes. Marcos was already signing a delivery form. "Miss Henderson?" one of the delivery men asked when he spotted her. "Yes, that's me," she confirmed, still processing the scene. "Special delivery from Secure Net, 15 laptops, all refurbished with new solid-state drives and operating systems. Mr. Wilson said you were expecting them?" 15? Olivia repeated, unable to hide her surprise. "He mentioned 10. The man shrugged. "Our instructions were for 15 plus these." He handed her an envelope with Eastside Community Center's name printed on the front. Olivia thanked the delivery team as Marcos eagerly began inspecting the laptops. Once they were alone, she opened the envelope to find a brief note written in a precise hand. "Olivia, the extra 5 laptops should allow you to expand your program if desired. They've all been updated with educational software packages that might be useful for your students. If you need any technical support, please contact the number below. I enjoyed our conversation Friday evening. Perhaps we could continue it sometime. My number is included if you're interested." Jake A. business card was clipped to the note, bearing Jake's contact information. "Everything okay?" Marcos asked, noticing Olivia's extended silence. She quickly tucked the note into her pocket. "Everything's fine. Better than fine, actually." "These are amazing," Marcos said, gesturing to the laptops he'd begun unpacking. "Brand new SSDs, tons of RAM, professional software suites. These must have cost a fortune." "They were donated," Olivia explained. "Corporate refresh program." Well, whoever your contact is at SecureNet, keep them happy. This just saved our coding program." Olivia smiled, thinking of the business card in her pocket and the unexpected second chance it represented. "I intend to." Later that afternoon, after the excitement of the laptop delivery had settled and students were already eagerly exploring the new machines, Olivia took a quiet moment to send a text to the number Jake had provided. "The laptops arrived today. 15 of them, all incredible. Our students are thrilled, and so am I. Thank you doesn't seem adequate, but it's a start. As for continuing our conversation, I'd like that. Maybe I could buy you coffee this time? No snap judgments, I promise." His response came quickly. "Coffee sounds great. How about Wednesday afternoon?" As Olivia confirmed the details, she couldn't help but marvel at how differently things were unfolding than she'd expected after their disastrous blind date. The man she'd dismissed as lacking ambition was proving to be not only successful, but generous and forgiving as well. What had begun as her worst blind date was evolving into something unexpected, a connection that challenged her preconceptions and perhaps offered something worth exploring further. Whether it developed into friendship, professional alliance, or something more remained to be seen. But for the first time since that fateful evening at Artisan's Brew, Olivia found herself genuinely looking forward to seeing Jake Wilson again. What neither of them realized was that their story was just beginning, and that the complicated dance of perceptions, expectations, and genuine connection was about to become even more intricate in the days ahead. The coffee shop Jake had suggested for their Wednesday meeting was nothing like Olivia expected. Instead of an upscale establishment in a trendy neighborhood, he'd chosen a small, unassuming place tucked between a laundromat and a used bookstore in one of Seattle's older residential areas. Brick walls, mismatched furniture, and the rich aroma of freshly ground beans created an atmosphere of comfortable authenticity. Olivia arrived 5 minutes early, dressed in what Sarah had deemed her casual but intentional outfit. Dark jeans, a soft burgundy sweater, and low-heeled boots. She'd spent an embarrassing amount of time that morning debating her appearance, reminding herself repeatedly that this wasn't a date. It was a thank-you coffee with someone who had generously helped her community center. Nothing more. The fact that her stomach fluttered with nervous anticipation was entirely beside the point. She was still settling at a corner table when Jake walked in, looking more like the man from their blind date than the polished entrepreneur from the gala. He wore jeans and a grey Henley beneath a well-worn leather jacket, his dark hair slightly tousled from the wind outside. "You found it," he said with a smile, sliding into the chair across from her. "Most people have never heard of this place." "It's charming," Olivia replied honestly. "How did you discover it?" "I lived 3 blocks from here when I first moved to Seattle, before SecureNet took off." He glanced around with obvious affection. "The owner, Eleanor, let me camp out for hours coding when I couldn't afford office space. She only charged me for every 3rd coffee." As if summoned by her name, an older woman with silver-streaked dark hair appeared beside their table. "Jacob Wilson," she said with a warm Spanish accent. "2 visits in 1 week. I'm honored." Jake stood to accept her hug. "Elena, this is Olivia Henderson." "Olivia, meet Elena Reyes, the best coffee roaster in Seattle and the reason SecureNet exists." Elena waved away his praise. "This boy exaggerates. I just provided caffeine and occasionally reminded him to eat." "Which was crucial," Jake insisted. "Elena, Olivia runs the East Side Community Center. They provide technology education for underserved kids." Elena's eyes brightened with interest. "Important work. What can I get you both?" After they ordered, a cortado for Jake and a cappuccino for Olivia, Elena disappeared toward the counter with a knowing smile that made Olivia wonder exactly what Jake had told her about this meeting. "You come here often?" Olivia asked. "Not as much as I'd like," Jake admitted, "but at least once a month. Elena refuses to let me invest in the place or pay her back for all those free coffees, so I make sure to bring clients here when I can. She deserves the business." This small insight into Jake's character, his loyalty to someone who'd helped him before his success, warmed Olivia more than she expected. "The laptops are amazing," she said, steering the conversation to the ostensible reason for their meeting. "I can't thank you enough. The students were beyond excited yesterday." Jake's expression brightened. "I'm glad to hear it. Were the software packages useful?" "Incredibly. The coding platforms alone would have cost thousands if we'd had to purchase them. And the design software opens up whole new possibilities for our older students." Their drinks arrived, delivered by Elena herself, despite the growing line at the counter. After she left, Jake leaned forward slightly. "So, tell me more about how you ended up running a community center. Sarah mentioned you studied public health." Olivia nodded, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "My original plan was to work in healthcare policy, but during my senior year internship, I realized I wanted something more directly connected to community. The problems I cared about, educational inequality, resource gaps, social determinants of health, all intersected at places like Eastside. When the program director position opened up 3 years ago, it felt right, even though I was probably underqualified." "I doubt that," Jake said. "Running a non-profit with limited resources requires more skill than many corporate leadership positions. I should know. I've done both." "It's definitely a challenge," Olivia acknowledged. "But seeing the impact keeps me motivated. Like yesterday watching Deshawn, one of our middle schoolers who's been coding with pencil and paper because his family can't afford a computer, seeing his face when he realized he could work on his game project every day now instead of just during class time." She paused, suddenly self-conscious about her enthusiasm. "Sorry, I tend to go on about the center." "Don't apologize," Jake said, his expression genuinely interested. "Your passion for your work is evident. It's refreshing." "What about you?" Olivia asked. "What led you to cybersecurity?" Jake considered the question for a moment. "A combination of skill and necessity, honestly. I was good at coding from an early age, self-taught on library computers because we couldn't afford one at home. By 16, I was finding security vulnerabilities in websites as a hobby. Eventually realized I could make a living helping companies protect their data. That's how SecureNet started?" "Not quite," Jake said. "First came college. Stanford on scholarship. Then a couple of soul-crushing years at a major tech firm where I proposed the security protocol that would eventually become SecureNet's core product. When they rejected the idea, I left and built it myself. That must have been scary, Olivia observed. Leaving a stable job to start something new. Jake laughed. Terrifying. I lived on ramen and slept on a friend's couch. For 6 months, this cafe was essentially my office. His expression grew more serious. But I believed in what I was building. I knew it mattered. The parallel to her own dedication to East Side wasn't lost on Olivia. Despite their different fields and outcomes, they shared a commitment to work they found meaningful. "So what's next for you?" she asked. "I overheard someone at the gala mention Google made you an offer." Jake's eyebrows rose slightly. "The Seattle tech gossip machine is efficient as ever." "Sorry, I wasn't eavesdropping intentionally." "No worries," he assured her. "It's true, there have been offers, but I'm not interested in selling right now. We're developing security solutions for non-profit sectors that can't afford enterprise-level protection, healthcare, education, community organizations." Olivia leaned forward, genuinely intrigued. "That sounds important. Most small non-profits I know have practically no cybersecurity." "Exactly. They're vulnerable, especially those with sensitive client data. We're creating a scaled-down version of our enterprise system with sliding scale pricing." Jake's eyes lit up as he described the technical challenges, his hands gesturing animatedly. Watching him, Olivia felt a twinge of regret for her harsh judgment during their first meeting. The passion he now displayed had been completely hidden that night. Their conversation flowed easily from there, moving between professional interests and more personal topics. Olivia learned that Jake had grown up with a single mother in a small town outside Portland, that he'd taught himself to code using library books and free internet access, and that despite his wealth, he still found excessive luxury uncomfortable. "I bought a ridiculous house when the acquisition went through," he admitted. "It felt like what I was supposed to do. Now it's mostly empty space I don't use." "No roommates? Partners?" Olivia asked, trying to sound casual. Jake shook his head. "My last relationship ended about a year ago. She was a marketing executive who found my lack of social ambition frustrating." He gave Olivia a wry smile. "Apparently I don't leverage my personal brand effectively enough." Olivia winced. "Ouch! That sounds unpleasantly familiar to what I said." "Different context," Jake assured her. "She wanted me to become a tech celebrity, speaking circuits, magazine covers, influencer status. That's never been my goal." "What is your goal?" Olivia asked, genuinely curious. Jake considered the question with unexpected seriousness. "To build something that matters, to use what I've earned to solve problems that need solving." He paused. "And maybe to find someone who values those same things." Their eyes met across the table, and Olivia felt something shift between them, a recognition of shared values beneath their surface differences. The moment was interrupted by Olivia's phone buzzing with a text from Marcos. "Emergency board meeting called for tomorrow. Need budget projections ASAP." "Everything okay?" Jake asked, noticing her frown. "Just work," she sighed. "Our board chair has called a surprise meeting, which usually means budget scrutiny." "Financial challenges?" "Always," Olivia admitted. "We lost a major grant last month, and while we've managed to keep programs running, our reserves are dangerously low." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "Non-profit sustainability is incredibly difficult. Have you considered corporate partnerships beyond one-time donations?" "Constantly," Olivia said with a rueful smile. "But most companies want splashy, visible projects with immediate PR benefits, not the unglamorous operational support we actually need." "What if—" Jake began, then stopped himself. "What?" He hesitated. "I was going to suggest SecureNet might be interested in a more substantial partnership, but I don't want to complicate things between us." Olivia straightened in her chair. "What kind of partnership?" "We've been looking for a pilot site to test our non-profit security package," Jake explained. Somewhere we could also potentially hold workshops for students interested in cybersecurity. East Side could be perfect. The professional opportunity was too significant to dismiss, regardless of any personal complications. That sounds incredible, Jake. But you're right about the potential for things to get blurred. How about this? He suggested after a moment's thought. I'll have my community outreach director contact your center formally with a proposal. You can evaluate it with your board based solely on its merits. My personal connection stays completely separate. Olivia nodded, relieved by his understanding of the ethical considerations. That seems reasonable. Good, Jake said with a smile. And speaking of separation between personal and professional, he hesitated briefly. Would you like to have dinner sometime? An actual date, where neither of us is hiding or apologizing for anything. The question caught Olivia by surprise, though perhaps it shouldn't have. The chemistry between them had been building throughout their conversation, a natural connection that felt both unexpected and somehow inevitable. I'd like that, she heard herself saying. Very much. Jake's smile widened. How about Saturday? I know a place with the best Thai food in Seattle. Completely unpretentious, I promise. Saturday works, Olivia agreed, trying to ignore the flutter of anticipation in her chest. As they finished their coffees and prepared to leave, Elena appeared again, this time bearing a small bag. Pastries for tomorrow, she told Olivia with a warm smile, a small welcome gift. Oh, that's not necessary, Olivia began, but Elena waved away her protest. Any friend of Jacob's is welcome here, she insisted. Besides, he paid for a month of pastries in advance. This is just the first installment. Olivia shot Jake a questioning look. He shrugged, looking slightly embarrassed. I might have mentioned I was meeting someone special. The casual comment sent an unexpected warmth through Olivia as she thanked Elena and accepted the bag. Outside, the autumn afternoon had turned grey and misty, typical Seattle weather. Jake walked Olivia to her car, their conversation continuing easily until they reached the small parking lot. Thank you for suggesting this, Olivia said, gesturing back toward the cafe. It was perfect. I'm glad you liked it, Jake replied. Elena will probably interrogate me thoroughly next time I'm in. Olivia laughed. She seems protective of you. She knew me when I was nobody, Jake said simply. Those people matter. As they said their goodbyes, Jake hesitated for a moment, as if considering something, then leaned in and gently kissed Olivia's cheek. The brief contact sent a surprising jolt through her. I'm looking forward to Saturday, he said softly. Me too, Olivia replied, suddenly feeling like a teenager again. As she drove back to Eastside, Olivia found herself smiling despite the looming board meeting and budget concerns. Something unexpected was developing with Jake Wilson, something that had begun with her worst blind date and was evolving into possibly her most intriguing relationship. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. So, how was coffee with Mr. Millionaire? Olivia laughed and dictated a reply through her car's system. Surprisingly wonderful. We're having dinner Saturday. Sarah's response was immediate. I knew it. Told you he was perfect for you. Olivia shook her head, still smiling. Perhaps Sarah's matchmaking hadn't been so misguided after all, just premature. She and Jake had needed to find their own way to each other, past misconceptions and first impressions. What Olivia didn't know as she returned to work was that the path forward would be more complicated than either of them anticipated. Jake's proposed partnership between SecureNet and Eastside was about to face unexpected opposition, and their budding personal relationship would soon be tested by forces neither could have predicted. The Eastside Community Center's board meeting the following morning was tense from the start. Olivia sat at the conference table, financial projections displayed on her laptop, facing 7 board members whose expressions ranged from concerned to openly hostile. Richard Townsend, the board chair and retired banking executive who had joined the board primarily for social status rather than genuine commitment to their mission, led the interrogation. The numbers are concerning, Ms. "Henderson," he said, peering at her over half-moon glasses, "we're operating with barely 2 months of reserves. The Pierce Foundation rejection was a significant setback." "I understand the concerns," Olivia replied evenly, "but we've received 15 new laptops as a donation from SecureNet, which addresses our immediate technology needs without impacting the budget. And I've been exploring a potential corporate partnership that could provide sustainable funding." This caught the board's attention. Partnerships with tech companies were highly coveted in the non-profit world. "What kind of partnership?" asked Diane Chen, one of the more supportive board members. "SecureNet is looking for a pilot site to test their new cybersecurity package for non-profits," Olivia explained. "They're also interested in possibly holding workshops for students. Their outreach director should be contacting us formally soon with details." Richard's eyes narrowed. "SecureNet? Isn't that Jake Wilson's company?" Olivia nodded, maintaining her professional demeanor. "Yes, Mr. Wilson is the founder and CEO. And how did this potential partnership arise?" Richard pressed. "We haven't had contact with SecureNet before." Olivia had anticipated this question. "I met Mr. Wilson at the Pierce Foundation Gala last week. We discussed Eastside's mission, and he expressed interest in our work. Oh, what she didn't mention was the blind date, the 15 laptops as a personal apology, or the dinner planned for Saturday. Those details weren't relevant to the board's evaluation of the potential partnership." "I see," Richard said, his tone suggesting he might know more than he was letting on. "Well, while corporate partnerships are generally positive, we need to be cautious about becoming too dependent on a single donor, especially one with a personal connection to our executive director." Olivia felt her face grow warm. "The partnership would be evaluated on its merits alone, with full transparency to the board. There's no conflict of interest." "Not yet, perhaps," Richard commented. "But these situations can become complicated." Before Olivia could respond, Diane intervened. "I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's wait to see the formal proposal from SecureNet before raising concerns." The other board members murmured agreement, and Richard reluctantly moved on to the next agenda item. But the look he gave Olivia made it clear that the subject wasn't closed. After the meeting, Diane pulled Olivia aside in the hallway. "Richard's son-in-law works for Nexus Tech," she said quietly. "They're direct competitors with SecureNet in the security space." Suddenly, Richard's resistance made more sense. "That explains his reaction," Olivia sighed. "Just be careful," Diane advised. "Richard has influence with several board members. If he opposes the SecureNet partnership strongly, it could become difficult." "The partnership would be incredibly beneficial for Eastside," Olivia insisted. "I can't let personal politics interfere with what's best for our community." "I agree," Diane said. "Just make sure everything is absolutely transparent. And Olivia," she hesitated, "if there is anything personal developing between you and Jake Wilson, be extra cautious. Richard would use that against you in a heartbeat." As Diane walked away, Olivia felt a knot forming in her stomach. The potential partnership with SecureNet could solve many of Eastside's financial challenges, providing stability for their programs and new opportunities for their students. But if her personal relationship with Jake continued to develop, would it jeopardize everything she'd worked for? She returned to her office to find an email waiting from Lisa Camarillo, SecureNet's Community Outreach Director, outlining a formal partnership proposal exactly as Jake had described. The terms were generous: a 3-year commitment including free security software, technical support, educational workshops for students, and a $50,000 annual grant for operational expenses. It was exactly what Eastside needed. But as Olivia reviewed the proposal, she couldn't help wondering if pursuing both a professional partnership and a personal relationship with Jake was wise or even possible. That evening, as she prepared to leave the center, her phone buzzed with a text from Jake, just checking in. How did the board meeting go? Olivia stared at her phone, unsure how to respond. Should she tell him about Richard's opposition, about her growing concerns regarding their personal connection? Eventually she typed, "Complicated. Can we talk about it Saturday?" His reply came quickly, "Of course. Looking forward to seeing you." Olivia slipped her phone into her bag, struck by the irony of her situation. A week ago, her biggest concern had been recovering from the embarrassment of misjudging Jake Wilson. Now, she faced the much more complex challenge of navigating feelings for him while protecting the institution she'd dedicated her career to building. As she locked her office door, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that their story was about to become significantly more complicated, and that the worst blind date of her life might ultimately lead to one of her most difficult professional dilemmas. Olivia stood in front of her bedroom mirror on Saturday evening, studying her reflection with uncharacteristic uncertainty. She'd changed outfits 3 times already, rejecting options that seemed either too formal or too casual for what Jake had described as a neighborhood gem with amazing food. Sarah, perched on the edge of Olivia's bed with an amused expression, had been providing running commentary on each selection. "That's the one," Sarah declared as Olivia smoothed the front of a rust-colored wrap dress that complemented her warm brown skin. "Elegant, but not trying too hard. Are you sure? It's not too much for a casual dinner?" Olivia turned sideways, still assessing. Sarah laughed. "For someone who told this man he wasn't good enough for you 2 weeks ago, you're certainly investing a lot of energy in impressing him now." "I'm not trying to impress him," Olivia protested weakly. "I just want to look appropriate." "Uh-huh." Sarah's knowing smile made it clear she wasn't convinced. "And the fact that you've spent 45 minutes getting ready for this casual dinner has nothing to do with how you feel about him." Olivia sighed, dropping onto the bed beside her roommate. "It's complicated, Sarah. I like him more than I expected to. But the potential partnership between SecureNet and Eastside could be a game-changer for our programs." "So what's the problem?" "Sounds like a win-win." "Richard Townsend is the problem," Olivia explained. "He's already implying there's a conflict of interest, and he doesn't even know we're dating." "Are you dating?" Sarah questioned. "1 coffee and 1 upcoming dinner doesn't exactly qualify as a relationship." "You know what I mean," Olivia said, reaching for her earrings. "If things develop between Jake and me, it could jeopardize the partnership. Richard would use it as ammunition to kill the deal." Sarah considered this. "So your options are pursue the partnership and keep things strictly professional with Jake, or pursue Jake and recuse yourself from the partnership negotiations." "Neither option feels right," Olivia admitted. "The center needs this partnership, but I also can't ignore what's developing between us. It feels significant." "Then be honest with Jake tonight," Sarah advised. "He's a successful businessman. He'll understand the professional considerations. Together, you might find a solution neither of us has thought of." Olivia nodded, fastening her second earring as the doorbell rang. Sarah's eyebrows shot up. "He's picking you up? Not meeting you there?" "He offered, and it seemed silly to take separate cars," Olivia explained, grabbing her purse and checking her appearance one last time. "Definitely a date," Sarah confirmed with a grin, following Olivia to the door. When Olivia opened it, Jake stood on the landing in dark jeans and a charcoal button-down shirt, holding a small bouquet of autumn-colored flowers. His appreciative glance as he took in Olivia's appearance sent a warmth through her that had nothing to do with the unseasonably mild October evening. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you," Olivia replied, suddenly feeling like she'd forgotten how dating worked. "Come in for a second while I put these in water." As Jake stepped into the apartment, Sarah appeared from the hallway with a broad smile. "Jake Wilson. So nice to finally meet the man behind the worst blind date in history." "Sarah!" Olivia hissed, mortified. Jake laughed, extending his hand to Sarah. "The very same, though I'm hoping tonight goes better than our first encounter." "Oh, I'm sure it will," Sarah replied with a mischievous grin. "Olivia's been getting ready for hours." 45 minutes is not hours," Olivia corrected, shooting her roommate a warning look as she returned with the flowers in a vase. And we should probably go before Sarah shares any more unhelpful information. I'm just saying the bar is low, Sarah called as they headed for the door. All you have to do is not hide your entire identity, and you're already winning. Despite her embarrassment, Olivia found herself laughing as they descended the stairs to Jake's car, the Tesla she glimpsed the night of their first date. I apologize for Sarah. Subtlety isn't her strong suit. I like her, Jake said, opening the passenger door. She cares about you. She does, Olivia agreed, even if her methods are sometimes questionable. As they drove through Seattle's evening traffic, Jake explained their destination, a family-owned Thai restaurant in a residential neighborhood that had been operating for over 30 years. The owner's daughter went through my accelerator program for underrepresented founders, Jake explained. She's developed restaurant management software that's revolutionizing how small restaurants handle everything from inventory to staffing. Brilliant woman. You run an accelerator program too? Olivia asked, realizing how little she still knew about Jake's professional life. It's small, just 4 founders per cohort, he explained. We focus exclusively on entrepreneurs from backgrounds traditionally underrepresented in tech, provide funding, mentorship, and connections without taking the excessive equity that most accelerators demand. Once again, Olivia found herself impressed by the thoughtfulness behind Jake's success. That's incredible. How many cohorts have you run? We're on our 4th, Jake said as he navigated through a quiet neighborhood. 22 businesses so far, 17 still operating and growing. Not a bad success rate for startups. The restaurant, when they arrived, was exactly as Jake had described, unassuming from the outside, but warm and inviting within. The tantalizing aromas of lemongrass, basil, and spices filled the air as a woman in her 60s greeted Jake with obvious affection. "Jake, so good to see you," she said, embracing him before turning to Olivia with a warm smile. "And you must be Olivia. Welcome to Sawadee. Olivia, this is Sunisa," Jake introduced them. "The best chef in Seattle and a continued source of wisdom whenever I need it." "He exaggerates," Sunisa said, though her pleased expression suggested she appreciated the compliment. "Come, I've saved you the best table." She led them to a corner booth, partially secluded by a decorative screen adorned with intricate Thai artwork. After Sunisa took their drink orders and left with dining suggestions, Olivia raised an eyebrow at Jake. "You told her about me?" Jake looked slightly embarrassed. "I might have mentioned I was bringing someone special tonight." "That's the second time you've used that word," Olivia observed. "Special. Is it inaccurate?" Jake asked, his direct gaze making her heart beat a little faster. "I don't know," she answered honestly. 2 weeks ago I was telling you that you weren't ambitious enough for me. Now we're having what appears to be a very thoughtfully planned date. It's a lot to process." "Fair enough," Jake acknowledged. "How about we start with something simpler? Tell me about your day." The tension eased as they fell into conversation, discussing everything from Olivia's morning volunteer session teaching seniors to use computers to Jake's ongoing battle with his home's overly complicated smart home system. "It's supposed to be the height of technological convenience," he explained as their appetizers arrived. "But half the time, I can't get the lights to turn on without shouting at the ceiling like a madman." Olivia laughed, finding his willingness to admit technological defeats endearing. The genius behind SecureNet, defeated by his own light switches. "Security software is logical," Jake defended himself with a smile. "Home automation is clearly powered by mischievous spirits." As their main courses arrived, a fragrant green curry for Olivia and a spicy basil stir-fry for Jake, Sunisa insisted on bringing them additional dishes to try, despite their protests that they couldn't possibly eat more food. "She does this every time," Jake explained after Sunisa departed. "Resistance is futile." Adieu. Their conversation continued easily, moving between light-hearted topics and more meaningful exchanges. Jake asked thoughtful questions about Olivia's work and listened attentively to her answers. In turn, she found herself genuinely interested in his perspectives on everything from education reform to the ethics of artificial intelligence. It wasn't until they were sharing a dessert of mango sticky rice that Jake finally brought up the topic Olivia had been both anticipating and dreading. "So," he said, setting down his spoon, "you mentioned the board meeting was complicated. I noticed Lisa sent over the partnership proposal. Was there pushback?" Olivia took a deep breath, deciding that Sarah's advice to be direct was the right approach. "Yes, from our board chair specifically, Richard Townsend. He implied there might be a conflict of interest due to my personal connection with you." Jake's expression grew thoughtful. "I see. And does this Richard know about our blind date or dinner tonight?" "No," Olivia said. "Just that we met at the gala and subsequently received a laptop donation and partnership proposal. But Diane, another board member, told me after the meeting that Richard's son-in-law works for Nexus Tech." "Ah," Jake said, understanding immediately. "Our biggest competitor in the security space. That explains his resistance." "It does," Olivia agreed. "But it also raises a legitimate question about how we navigate this situation. The partnership would be incredibly valuable for Eastside, but if we continue to," she gestured between them, "see each other, it could complicate things." Jake was quiet for a moment, considering. "What do you want, Olivia? Both professionally and personally?" The directness of the question caught her off guard. "Professionally, I want what's best for Eastside and the communities we serve. The partnership you're offering would transform our ability to provide services." "And personally?" Jake prompted gently. Olivia met his gaze. "Personally, I'd like to see where this goes. I enjoy being with you, more than I expected to." A smile spread across Jake's face. "I feel the same way." "But that doesn't solve our problem," Olivia pointed out. "Actually, I think it might simplify it," Jake said, leaning forward. "What if SecureNet still offers the partnership, but I personally recuse myself from any involvement? Lisa can handle everything directly with your board. I won't attend meetings, review reports, or have any input on how the program runs at Eastside specifically." Olivia considered this. "That could work from SecureNet's end, but I'd still need to be transparent with my board about our personal connection." "Of course," Jake agreed. "Complete transparency is essential. You disclose that we're seeing each other, explain the separation between the partnership and our personal relationship, and recuse yourself from votes related to SecureNet if necessary." "Ooh, Richard will still try to use it against me," Olivia said. "Probably," Jake acknowledged, "but if the partnership terms are objectively beneficial to Eastside, would the other board members really reject it just because of Richard's personal agenda?" Olivia thought about Diane and the other board members who genuinely cared about Eastside's mission. "No, I don't think they would. Not if everything is handled professionally." Jake reached across the table, taking her hand. "Then maybe we don't have to choose between the partnership and exploring this connection between us." The warmth of his hand around hers sent a current of awareness through Olivia. The solution he proposed was logical and ethical, addressing the professional concerns while still allowing their personal relationship to develop naturally. "It could work," she agreed, a weight lifting from her shoulders. "And if it doesn't," Jake added, "if the board decides the perceived conflict is too great, SecureNet can still find ways to support Eastside's work through general grants or program sponsorship that don't require a formal partnership." Olivia was touched by his commitment to helping her community center, regardless of how things proceeded between them personally. It reflected a generosity of spirit she was coming to recognize as fundamental to who Jake was, not a performance or strategy, but a genuine value. "Thank you," she said softly, "for understanding and for being willing to navigate this complexity." Jake smiled, squeezing her hand gently. "Some things are worth the effort." After dinner, they declined Sunisa's offers of more dessert and additional dishes to take home. though she still managed to press a container of mango sticky rice into Olivia's hands for tomorrow. Outside, the evening had grown cooler, and Jake offered Olivia his jacket as they decided to walk for a while before heading back to the car. The neighborhood was quiet, tree-lined streets illuminated by the soft glow of streetlights. "Tell me about your family," Jake said as they walked. "You haven't mentioned them much." "My parents live in Chicago," Olivia explained. "Dad's a high school principal, Mom's a nurse. They're incredibly supportive, if constantly worried that non-profit work will lead to me living in their basement at 40. Jake laughed. "Do they visit Seattle often?" "Once a year, usually in summer when Chicago becomes unbearably hot. They love the center, though. Mom volunteers with our senior health programs whenever she's here." Olivia glanced at him curiously. "What about your family?" A shadow passed over Jake's expression. "It's just my mom. She still lives in Oregon, in the same small house where I grew up. I've offered to buy her something bigger or in a better neighborhood, but she refuses." "You're close?" Jake nodded. "She raised me alone after my father left when I was 4, worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat. Everything I know about persistence and integrity I learned from her. She must be incredibly proud of what you've accomplished," Olivia observed. "She is, though she still treats me exactly the same as when I was fixing her friends' computers for $20 in high school." A fond smile crossed his face. "She came to Seattle after the acquisition and saw my house for the first time. Her main comment was that it had too many windows to clean." Olivia laughed, picturing the scene. "I'd like to meet her sometime." The words slipped out before she could consider their implication. Meeting family was a significant step, one that suggested a relationship more established than their current status, but Jake didn't seem fazed. "She'd like you. She's always appreciated people who work to make a difference rather than just make money." They continued walking, conversation flowing easily between them. When they eventually circled back to Jake's car, Olivia felt a reluctance to end the evening. Their dinner had confirmed what she'd begun to suspect during their coffee meeting, that beneath their initial misunderstandings lay a genuine connection worth exploring. As they drove back toward her apartment, Jake asked, "Would you like to do something tomorrow? There's a farmer's market in Ballard I thought we could check out, maybe grab lunch after." The eagerness in his voice matched Olivia's own feelings. "I'd like that." When they reached her building, Jake walked her to the door, both of them lingering on the steps. "Thank you for tonight," Olivia said. "It was perfect." "Even with our complicated professional situation?" Jake asked with a slight smile. "Especially with that," Olivia replied honestly. "I appreciate that you didn't dismiss my concerns or suggest I should choose between my work and just this." Jake's expression grew serious. "Your work is part of who you are, Olivia. I would never ask you to compromise that." In that moment, standing on her apartment steps with the soft glow of the porch light illuminating Jake's face, Olivia realized just how completely wrong her first impression had been. The man before her possessed not only ambition, but integrity, thoughtfulness, and a genuine desire to make a difference, qualities that aligned perfectly with what she valued most. When he leaned in to kiss her, it felt like the most natural conclusion to their evening. His lips were gentle at first, then more certain as she responded. Olivia found herself sliding her hands up to his shoulders, the solid warmth of him anchoring her, as the world seemed to tilt slightly on its axis. When they finally pulled apart, Jake rested his forehead against hers for a moment. "Definitely better than our first date," he murmured. Olivia laughed softly. "The bar was extremely low." "Fair point," he acknowledged with a smile. "I'll pick you up at 10 tomorrow." "I'll be ready," she promised. As Jake walked back to his car, Olivia stood watching for a moment before entering her apartment. She found Sarah curled up on the couch with her laptop, waiting with poorly disguised eagerness for details. "Well," Sarah demanded, "how was it?" Olivia couldn't suppress her smile. "It was special." Sarah's delighted laugh followed Olivia down the hallway as she headed to her room, her mind already anticipating the following day and the promise of something unexpected but increasingly precious developing between her and Jake Wilson. What neither of them could have anticipated was that their carefully crafted solution to balance personal and professional boundaries was about to be tested in ways they couldn't have imagined. Richard Townsend had his own agenda, and the story of Jake and Olivia's initial meeting was about to become very public, with consequences neither could predict. The farmers' market in Ballard was bustling with Sunday morning activity when Jake and Olivia arrived the next day. Stalls overflowed with autumn produce, pumpkins, apples, late-season berries, and leafy greens. Local artisans displayed handcrafted jewelry, ceramics, and textiles, while the aroma of fresh bread and coffee filled the air. Olivia had dressed casually in jeans, boots, and a soft blue sweater beneath a light jacket. Jake matched her informal attire in dark jeans and a green flannel shirt that brought out flecks of color in his eyes. As they wandered between stalls, sampling local honey and selecting apples, Olivia was struck by how comfortable she felt with him, as if they'd been doing this for years rather than navigating the early stages of whatever was developing between them. "Try this," Jake insisted, offering her a piece of artisanal cheese from a sample tray. "It's incredible." Olivia accepted the morsel, her eyes widening at the rich, complex flavor. "Wow, that is amazing." Jake immediately turned to the cheese vendor. "We'll take the medium size." "You don't have to buy everything I like," Olivia protested as Jake paid. "I'm not," he assured her. "I'm buying things we both like, so I have an excuse to invite you over for dinner next weekend." The casual implication of future plans sent a pleasant warmth through Olivia. "Is that your strategy? Stockpiling ingredients to ensure future dates? Is it working?" Jake asked with a grin, accepting the wrapped cheese from the vendor. "It might be," Olivia admitted, unable to stop her answering smile. They continued through the market, gathering bread, more cheese, and seasonal fruit. At a flower stall, Jake bought Olivia a small bouquet of late-blooming dahlias in vibrant autumn colors. As they rounded the corner to the next row of vendors, Olivia spotted a familiar face that made her heart sink. Richard Townsend stood examining organic produce with a woman Olivia recognized as his wife. Before she could suggest changing direction, Richard looked up and saw her, his eyes narrowing as he registered Jake's presence beside her. "Ms. Henderson," he called, setting down the vegetables he'd been inspecting and making his way toward them. "What a surprise." "Mr. Townsend," Olivia replied, maintaining a professional tone despite her discomfort. "Good morning. This is Jake Wilson." Jake extended his hand, which Richard shook with obvious reluctance. "Mr. Townsend, I understand you chair the board at Eastside Community Center. Important work." "Indeed," Richard replied coolly. "We take our governance responsibilities very seriously, including ensuring appropriate boundaries between personal and professional relationships." "Oui." The pointed comment hung in the air for a moment before Olivia responded. "I was actually planning to discuss that with you and the board this week. SecureNet's partnership proposal is an incredible opportunity for Eastside, and we want to ensure complete transparency about any potential conflicts of interest." Richard's expression remained skeptical. "I see. And when exactly did this relationship begin? Before or after the laptop donation?" The implication was clear, and Olivia felt her face flush with indignation. Before she could respond, Jake spoke, his voice calm but firm. "Mr. Townsend, I understand your concern for proper governance. It's appropriate and necessary. But I should clarify that SecureNet's interest in supporting digital equity organizations like Eastside predates my personal connection with Ms. Henderson. The timing of our meeting was coincidental, though fortunate on a personal level." Richard's eyes narrowed slightly. "Be that as it may, the appearance of impropriety can be just as damaging as impropriety itself. The board will need to consider whether this partnership is truly in Eastside's best interest." "Of course," Jake agreed. and to facilitate that assessment, I've already recused myself from any involvement in the East Side Partnership on SecureNet's side. Our community outreach director will handle all aspects of the relationship directly with your board." Richard seemed momentarily taken aback by this information. I see." "Additionally," Olivia added, finding her voice, "I plan to formally disclose our personal relationship to the board and recuse myself from votes specific to the SecureNet partnership. Full transparency is my priority, Mr. Townsend." The board chair's expression suggested he'd been prepared for more resistance and was unsure how to respond to their proactive approach. Finally, he nodded stiffly. "We'll discuss this at Tuesday's meeting. Good day, Ms. Henderson, Mr. Wilson." As Richard returned to his wife, Jake placed a reassuring hand on the small of Olivia's back. "That went well, considering." Olivia let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "He's going to make this difficult." "Probably," Jake agreed. "But you handled it perfectly. Professional, transparent, and completely ethical. The other board members will see that." She looked up at him gratefully. "Thank you for backing me up." "Always," he replied simply, the word carrying more weight than its casual delivery suggested. They continued through the market, but the encounter with Richard had cast a shadow over their morning. When they reached a small cafe at the edge of the market for lunch, Olivia was quieter than she'd been before, mentally preparing for Tuesday's board meeting. "Hey," Jake said softly, reaching across the table to touch her hand. "Try not to worry too much. Richard Townsend isn't the first person to try to use his position to advance a personal agenda. The partnership makes objective sense for Eastside. The board will see that." "I hope you're right," Olivia replied. "It's just frustrating to have something so beneficial for our students potentially derailed by politics. If this particular partnership doesn't work out, we'll find another way to support Eastside," Jake promised. "I mean that, Olivia. Regardless of what happens between us personally, I believe in what you're building there." His words settled something in Olivia's chest, a reassurance that whatever happened with Richard and the board, the work of the community center would continue. And maybe, just maybe, this unexpected connection with Jake would continue as well, developing into something neither of them had anticipated the night of their disastrous blind date. What she didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that Richard Townsend was already crafting an email to the full board, one that would frame Jake and Olivia's relationship in the most problematic light possible, setting in motion a chain of events that would test both their professional integrity and their personal commitment in ways they couldn't yet imagine. Olivia stared at her computer screen, reading Richard Townsend's email to the board for the third time, her hands shaking with a mixture of anger and disbelief. The message, sent late Sunday evening to all board members with the subject line, "Urgent Governance Concern," painted her encounter with Jake in the most suspicious terms possible. "It has come to my attention that our executive director, Ms. Henderson, has entered into a personal relationship with Jake Wilson, CEO of SecureNet, the company currently proposing a substantial partnership with our organization. This relationship appears to have preceded both the recent laptop donation and partnership proposal, raising serious questions about conflicts of interest and ethical decision-making. More concerning, Ms. Henderson failed to disclose this relationship until I happened to encounter her and Mr. Wilson together yesterday. This lack of transparency suggests a troubling disregard for proper non-profit governance and potentially exposes Eastside to reputation damage. I am calling for an emergency executive session of the board prior to Tuesday's regular meeting to discuss this matter and consider appropriate action. Richard Townsend, Board Chair. The email contained just enough truth to make its implications devastating, while conveniently omitting key facts, like the fact that she and Jake had only reconnected after their initial blind date at the Pierce Foundation Gala, or that they had proactively developed a plan to address any conflict of interest concerns. Diane had forwarded the email to Olivia late Sunday with a brief note. "Brace yourself, this is worse than I expected." Now, Monday morning, Olivia sat in her office trying to formulate a response that would be professional rather than defensive. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jake, "Just checking in. How are you doing today?" She hesitated before responding. Richard sent an email to the board suggesting impropriety in our relationship and the Secure Net partnership. Emergency executive session called for tomorrow. Jake's reply came quickly. "I'm so sorry, what can I do?" "Nothing right now. I need to prepare a formal response. We'll update you later. I'm here if you need anything, thinking of you." The simple message provided more comfort than Olivia had expected. She set her phone aside and turned back to her computer, beginning to type a clear, factual response to the board. She outlined the actual timeline of events, their blind date, her attendance at the gala, their reconnection, and the subsequent development of both the partnership proposal and their personal relationship. She emphasized the steps they had already planned to mitigate any conflict of interest and attached SecureNet's formal partnership proposal, highlighting its objective benefits for Eastside. After sending the email to all board members, copying the board secretary for the official record, Olivia tried to focus on her regular work. But concentration proved impossible as responses from board members began trickling in, revealing the factions forming. 3 expressed continued support for her leadership. 2 sided with Richard. The remaining 2 were non-committal, requesting more information before making any judgment. By late afternoon, Olivia's head was pounding from stress. She was gathering her things to leave early when Marcos appeared in her doorway, his expression unusually serious. "You should see this," he said, placing his tablet on her desk. The screen displayed a local tech blog with the headline, "SecureNet CEO's Romance Raises Non-Profit Ethics Questions." Below, it was a blurry photo of Olivia and Jake at the farmer's market, his hand on the small of her back as they walked away from what must have been their encounter with Richard. Olivia's stomach dropped as she skimmed the article, which cited sources close to the situation, claiming that Jake Wilson had leveraged his personal relationship with Eastside's director to secure a favorable partnership agreement. The piece even referenced their secret dates, while negotiations were underway, making their coffee meeting and dinner sound like clandestine affairs rather than the straightforward interactions they had been. "How did they get this?" Olivia whispered, horror rising in her throat. "It's being picked up by other blogs too," Marcos said grimly. "Someone really wanted this story out there." "Richard," Olivia thought immediately. It had to be. He or someone connected to him had not only taken photos of her and Jake at the market, but had deliberately framed their relationship in the most damaging light possible. Her phone began ringing, Diane calling. When Olivia answered, the board member's voice was tense. "Have you seen the blog posts?" "Just now," Olivia confirmed, her voice strained. "This is Richard's work," Diane said flatly. "His son-in-law is friends with the editor of that tech blog. But the damage is done. Several board members are panicking about potential reputation harm to Eastside." "What do I do?" Olivia asked, her professional poise finally cracking. "Come to the executive session prepared for the worst," Diane advised. "Bring every document related to the SecureNet partnership. And Olivia, you might want to warn Jake. Nexus Tech is already using this to try to damage SecureNet's reputation in the non-profit sector." After ending the call, Olivia sat motionless, trying to process how quickly her professional standing had been undermined. Then, gathering her strength, she called Jake. He answered immediately. "I just saw the article. I'm so sorry, Olivia." "It's not your fault," she said, though her voice wavered. "But you should know that Nexus Tech is apparently using this against SecureNet." "I know," Jake replied, his tone surprisingly calm. "Their VP of marketing is already circulating an email to potential non-profit clients suggesting SecureNet uses inappropriate relationships to secure partnerships." "This is a nightmare," Olivia whispered. "Jake, I'm so sorry." Listen to me, he said firmly. This is Richard Townsend's doing, not yours, and we have nothing to be ashamed of. We've been transparent and ethical in separating our personal and professional interactions, but the narrative is already out there, Olivia pointed out. People will believe what they read. Then we counter it with the truth, Jake said simply. I've already asked SecureNet's PR team to prepare a statement clarifying the timeline and the steps we've taken to prevent any conflict of interest. And I'd like to come to your board meeting tomorrow if you think it would help. Olivia considered this. I'm not sure. Richard might use your presence to further suggest undue influence. Fair point, Jake acknowledged. What about a written statement from me instead? Something the board can review that outlines exactly how the partnership proposal developed and the measures we've implemented to ensure ethical boundaries? That could help, Olivia agreed. I'll have it to you within the hour, Jake promised. And, Olivia, whatever happens with the board or the partnership, we'll get through this, together. His confidence steadied her. Together, she repeated, drawing strength from the word. After they ended the call, Olivia gathered her belongings and left the center, unable to face any more concerned looks from her staff. At home, she found Sarah waiting, having seen the blog posts herself. This is insane, her roommate declared, wrapping Olivia in a hug. What can I do? Nothing, unfortunately, Olivia sighed, sinking onto the couch, except maybe help me prepare for what might be the end of my career at Eastside. Don't say that, Sarah insisted. The board knows you. They know your integrity. They won't let Richard push you out over something so ridiculous. I hope you're right, Olivia said, though her confidence was fading. As promised, Jake's statement arrived by email within the hour. A clear, factual account that corroborated Olivia's timeline and emphasized SecureNet's commitment to ethical partnerships. He had attached documentation showing that SecureNet's non-profit initiative predated their meeting, including preliminary partnership discussions with similar organizations in other cities. Olivia forwarded the statement to the board secretary for distribution, then spent the remainder of the evening preparing for the executive session. By midnight, she had assembled a comprehensive packet of information addressing each of Richard's allegations with factual responses. It was the best she could do under the circumstances. As she finally prepared for bed, her phone lit up with a final text from Jake. Whatever happens tomorrow, remember that you've done nothing wrong. Your work at Eastside matters, and so do you. The simple message brought unexpected tears to Olivia's eyes. In the midst of professional chaos, the personal connection that had sparked it all remained a source of strength rather than regret. The Eastside Community Center's conference room felt unusually sterile as Olivia took her seat for the executive session Tuesday morning. Board members filed in silently, some avoiding her gaze, while others offered subtle nods of encouragement. Richard arrived last, his expression smug as he called the meeting to order. As you're all aware, he began, we face a serious governance issue regarding Ms. Henderson's undisclosed relationship with Jake Wilson and its impact on the proposed SecureNet partnership. Point of order, Diane interrupted. The characterization of the relationship as undisclosed is contested. Ms. Henderson has provided documentation showing her intent to disclose at this very meeting, before any formal decision on the partnership was to be made. Richard's jaw tightened. The timing of her planned disclosure became irrelevant when I discovered the relationship through chance encounter rather than proper protocol. Mr. Chair, another board member, Michael Reynolds, interjected. I'd like to focus on facts rather than interpretations. Could we have Ms. Henderson present her account of the timeline and proposed conflict mitigation measures? Richard reluctantly yielded the floor, and Olivia seized the opportunity. With calm professionalism that belied her inner turmoil, she walked the board through the complete chronology, from the initial blind date through the gala, the laptop donation, and the partnership proposal. She explained the measures she and Jake had proactively developed to maintain ethical boundaries, including his recusal from any involvement in the Eastside partnership, and her own recusal from related votes. Furthermore, she concluded, while I deeply regret the negative publicity this has generated for Eastside, I want to emphasize that at no point did I allow personal considerations to influence professional decisions. The SecureNet partnership represents an objectively beneficial opportunity for our community, regardless of my personal connection with Mr. Wilson. As she distributed copies of Jake's statement along with supporting documentation, Richard's expression grew increasingly frustrated. When she finished, he immediately went on the offensive. "While Ms. Henderson's account is conveniently tidy," he said, "the fact remains that public perception has been damaged. Several donors have already contacted me expressing concern about Eastside's ethical standards." "Which donors, specifically?" Diane asked pointedly. "As development chair, I should be informed of any donor concerns." Richard hesitated. "I'm not at liberty to share names at this time." "Convenient," Michael murmured, just loudly enough to be heard. For the next hour, the discussion circled through the same points repeatedly. Richard insisted that the appearance of impropriety was as harmful as actual misconduct. Olivia's supporters on the board emphasized her track record of integrity and the objective benefits of the SecureNet partnership. The undecided members asked probing questions about timing and disclosures. Finally, Richard called for a vote on his proposed resolution to reject the SecureNet partnership and place Olivia on administrative leave pending a full investigation of her conduct. The room fell silent as the secretary called each board member's name. When the votes were tallied, the result was a tie, 3 supporting Richard's motion, 3 opposing, with 1 abstention. "Since we have a tie," Richard announced with evident satisfaction, "as chair, I cast the deciding vote in favor of the resolution." "Actually," Diane interjected, "our bylaws specifically state that in the event of a tie vote on personnel matters, the motion fails. You don't get a tie-breaking vote in this case, Richard." Richard's face flushed with anger. "That's a misinterpretation of the bylaws." "No, it's not," the board secretary confirmed, retrieving the document in question. "Section 4, paragraph 3 specifically addresses this scenario." As Richard realized his motion had failed, his composure cracked. "This is absurd. She's clearly compromised her position by becoming involved with a major donor and partner." "That's enough, Richard," Michael said firmly. "Your personal vendetta is becoming unprofessional." "Vendetta?" Richard sputtered. "I'm protecting this organization." "Are you?" Diane challenged. "Or are you protecting your son-in-law's company by trying to derail a partnership with their competitor?" A stunned silence fell over the room as board members processed this accusation. Richard's face paled. That's an outrageous suggestion," he stammered. "Is it?" Michael asked. "Because it would explain why you've been so determined to torpedo this partnership despite its obvious benefits for Eastside." Another board member who had previously been undecided spoke up. "I think we need to table Richard's motion and instead vote on whether to accept the SecureNet partnership with the conflict mitigation measures Ms. Henderson has outlined." "I second that motion," Diane said quickly. Richard, recognizing he was losing control of the meeting, attempted to object, but the board secretary had already begun calling the new vote. This time, the result was 5 in favor, 2 opposed, with Richard and 1 ally constituting the minority. "The motion carries," the secretary announced. "Eastside Community Center will proceed with the SecureNet partnership under the conflict mitigation framework presented." Relief washed over Olivia, though she maintained her professional demeanor. "Thank you for your consideration. I want to assure the board that I will continue to prioritize transparency and ethical boundaries in all aspects of this partnership." Richard, face still flushed with anger, gathered his papers. "This isn't over. The public relations damage has already been done, and Eastside will suffer for it." With that parting shot, he stormed out of the conference room. As the remaining board members prepared to transition to their regular meeting, Diane approached Olivia. "You handled that with remarkable grace," she said quietly. "But be prepared. Richard isn't likely to let this go easily." "I know," Olivia acknowledged, "but at least the partnership can move forward. That's what matters most for our community." "And what about you and Jake?" Diane asked with genuine concern. "Will you continue seeing each other despite all this?" Olivia considered the question. The past few days had been among the most stressful of her professional life, all stemming from her personal connection with Jake. The rational decision might be to step back, to prioritize her career and the center's stability. But then she remembered Jake's unwavering support, his respect for her work, and the genuine connection they'd begun to build. Ending something with such potential because of Richard Townsend's manipulations felt like letting the wrong person win. "Yes," she said with newfound certainty, "we will." Jake was waiting in Elena's coffee shop when Olivia arrived that afternoon, having texted him after the board meeting. He stood when he saw her, his expression a mixture of concern and hope. "It passed," she announced as she reached him. "The board approved the partnership with our conflict mitigation plan intact." Relief washed over his face. "That's wonderful news. How did Richard take it?" Poorly," Olivia admitted, settling into the chair across from him. "He stormed out after the vote, but not before promising it wasn't over." Jake frowned. "That's concerning." "It is," Olivia agreed. "But for now, at least, Eastside gets the support it needs, and SecureNet can proceed with its non-profit initiative." Elena appeared with coffee for both of them, her knowing smile suggesting she understood they were celebrating something significant. After she left, Jake reached across the table to take Olivia's hand. "I want to apologize," he said seriously. "If I had known reconnecting with you would cause such chaos in your professional life, I might have approached things differently." "Don't apologize," Olivia replied, squeezing his hand. "Yes, this has been challenging, but I don't regret any of it." "No?" Jake asked, a small smile forming. "Not even telling me I wasn't ambitious enough for you?" Olivia laughed, the tension of the past days finally breaking. "Well, maybe that part, but not the rest. Not getting to know the real you." Jake's smile widened. "So where do we go from here, both professionally and personally?" "Professionally, Lisa from SecureNet will work directly with our board and staff on implementing the partnership. You and I maintain our agreed-upon distance from those interactions." Olivia took a breath. "And personally, I'd like to continue what we've started, if that's what you want too." "It is," Jake said without hesitation. "Very much so." The certainty in his voice sent warmth through Olivia. Despite the complications and public scrutiny their relationship had already faced, the connection between them felt increasingly valuable, worth protecting and nurturing. "Then we proceed," Olivia said, with eyes open about the challenges but focused on the possibilities. "I like the sound of that," Jake replied. "And speaking of possibilities, I mentioned my mom earlier. She's coming to visit this weekend, and I'd like you to meet her, if it's not too soon." The invitation surprised Olivia, not because it was unwelcome, but because of its significance. Meeting family represented a step forward, a declaration of intent beyond casual dating. "I'd love to meet her," she said, realizing she meant it completely. Jake's smile was radiant. "She'll adore you. Fair warning, though, she'll probably tell you embarrassing stories about my awkward teenage years coding in the basement." "Now I'm definitely looking forward to it," Olivia teased. As their conversation continued, shifting to lighter topics and future plans, Olivia felt a sense of rightness settle over her. The path that had begun with their disastrous blind date had been unexpectedly complicated, but it had led them here, to a deeper understanding of each other, to mutual respect that extended beyond surface impressions, and to a connection that had proven strong enough to withstand public scrutiny. What Richard Townsend and others saw as a problematic entanglement, Olivia now recognized as something precious, a relationship founded on shared values and genuine understanding, with the potential to grow into something lasting. Outside the cafe windows, Seattle's perpetual clouds had parted, allowing rare autumn sunshine to stream through. As Jake talked about his plans for SecureNet's non-profit initiative, his eyes alight with passion for the work, Olivia found herself thinking of her own words from their first meeting. "I deserve better." She had been right, in a way she couldn't have anticipated. She deserved someone who matched her passion and commitment, someone who understood the importance of her work, someone who approached challenges with integrity and thoughtfulness. As it turned out, that someone had been sitting across from her all along, hidden beneath a worn sweater and vague answers, waiting to be truly seen. "What are you thinking about?" Jake asked, noticing her reflective expression. Olivia smiled. "Just that sometimes what we deserve and what we think we deserve can be very different things." Jake nodded, seeming to understand perfectly. "And sometimes a worse blind date can lead to the best possible outcome." "Exactly," Olivia agreed, raising her coffee mug in a small toast. "Two unexpected beginnings. And even better continuations," Jake added, touching his mug to hers. As they sat together in the warm afternoon light, Olivia knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, whether from Richard Townsend's continued opposition, the public scrutiny of their relationship, or the normal complexities of building something meaningful together, they would face them as they had faced this first test, with honesty, integrity, and a shared commitment to what truly mattered. What had begun as a misunderstanding had evolved into something neither of them could have anticipated, a partnership, in the fullest sense of the word, between two people who had finally found what they truly deserved in each other. 6 months later, the spring fundraising gala for Eastside Community Center transformed their modest gymnasium into an elegant venue, with twinkling lights overhead and tables adorned with flowers donated by local businesses. Olivia moved through the crowd, greeting donors and community members, pride swelling in her chest at what they'd accomplished in the past half-year. The SecureNet partnership had exceeded all expectations. Their coding program had expanded to 3 additional schools, reaching over 200 students who otherwise would have had no access to technology education. The cybersecurity workshops Jake had envisioned had evolved into a comprehensive curriculum, with several Eastside students already offered summer internships at tech companies, including 3 at SecureNet. Richard Townsend had resigned from the board 2 months after the partnership vote, citing other commitments, but everyone understood the real reason. His departure had allowed the board to refocus on Eastside's mission rather than personal politics. "Your speech is in 15 minutes, Marcos reminded Olivia as he passed by, tablet in hand. "And the donor recognition segment right after." "I'm ready," Olivia assured him, smoothing the front of her elegant emerald gown. "Purchased this time, not borrowed." Her gaze drifted across the room to where Jake stood chatting with Diane and several other board members. In the 6 months since their relationship had been thrust into public view, they had navigated the challenges with remarkable success. The conflict mitigation measures had worked exactly as intended, with Lisa Camarillo managing all aspects of the SecureNet partnership, while Jake and Olivia maintained appropriate professional boundaries. In their personal lives, things had progressed with a depth and ease that still sometimes surprised Olivia. Jake's mother had indeed adored her from their first meeting, and the feeling had been mutual. 3 months ago, Jake had given up his oversized, underutilized lakefront home and purchased a more modest but still beautiful house closer to Eastside, a decision he claimed was about reducing his commute, but that Olivia suspected had more to do with their frequent conversations about creating a home that felt genuine rather than showy. They spent most evenings together now, alternating between her apartment and his house, building routines and traditions that felt increasingly permanent. Just last week, as they'd prepared dinner together in his kitchen, Jake had casually mentioned that her lease would be up in 2 months, and perhaps they should consider consolidating their living arrangements. The conversation that followed had been filled with practical considerations, but underlaid with the exciting certainty that they were building something lasting. Jake caught her eye across the room now and smiled. That same warm, genuine smile that had first appeared during their coffee shop reconciliation. He excused himself from his conversation and made his way toward her. "The event is a huge success," he said as he reached her, careful to maintain a professionally appropriate distance despite the pride in his eyes. "You should be very proud. We couldn't have done it without the SecureNet partnership," Olivia acknowledged. "The security software showcase your team put together is drawing a lot of attention." "That's all Lisa's work," Jake reminded her with a wink. "I'm just a regular donor who happens to be dating the executive director." Olivia laughed. Their careful adherence to their agreed boundaries had become something of a private joke between them, even as they remained sincerely committed to maintaining those ethical separations. "Speaking of which," Jake continued, lowering his voice slightly, "I have something for you later, after the gala." "Oh?" Olivia raised an eyebrow. "A hint?" "Let's just say it's small but significant," Jake replied with a mysterious smile. "Now you better prepare for your speech. The crowd is eager to hear about East Side's accomplishments." 20 minutes later, Olivia stood at the podium, looking out at the room filled with supporters, staff, students, and community members. "1 year ago," she began, "Eastside Community Center was struggling to maintain our most basic programs. Today, thanks to partnerships like the one with SecureNet and the dedication of our incredible community, we're expanding services and reaching more families than ever before." As she highlighted their accomplishments, the expanded coding program, the new Senior Tech Literacy Initiative, the refurbished computer lab, Olivia found her gaze repeatedly drawn to Jake, who watched her with undisguised admiration. "Most importantly," she concluded, "we've proven that with the right support and the right partnerships, we can close the digital divide in our community. Every child deserves access to the tools and education that will prepare them for the future, regardless of their circumstances. At Eastside, we're making that vision a reality, one student at a time." The applause was heartfelt, and as Olivia stepped away from the podium, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. This was why she had chosen non-profit work over more lucrative careers, for moments like this, when the impact of their efforts became tangibly visible. The remainder of the evening passed in a blur of conversations, recognition ceremonies, and fundraising successes. By the time the last guest departed, Olivia was exhausted but exhilarated. "Ready to go?" Jake asked, appearing beside her as she thanked the catering staff. "More than ready," she admitted, "though I should help with cleanup." "Already arranged," Jake assured her. "Marcos has a team handling everything. You've done enough tonight." Outside, the spring evening was mild, stars visible above in a rare break from Seattle's usual cloud cover. Jake drove them to his house, where Olivia now kept a section of the closet filled with her clothes and a drawer in the bathroom for her essentials. As they settled on the back deck with glasses of wine, overlooking the small but beautifully landscaped yard, Jake seemed uncharacteristically nervous. "You were amazing tonight," he said, taking her hand. "Watching you speak about Eastside's mission, seeing the impact you've had on so many lives, it reminded me of why I fell in love with you." Though they had exchanged those words before, they still sent a thrill through Olivia each time. "Thank you for always supporting that work," she said softly. "Not everyone would understand how important it is to me." "It's part of who you are," Jake replied simply. "Your passion for creating change, for helping others access opportunities, it's one of the things I admire most about you." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. Olivia's breath caught as he opened it, revealing not a ring as she had momentarily expected, but a key. "You mentioned that your lease is ending soon," Jake said. suddenly seeming unsure of himself in a way that reminded her of their coffee shop conversation all those months ago. And I hoped that maybe you'd consider making this arrangement permanent, moving in together, officially. The key gleamed in the soft outdoor lighting, representing not just access to a physical space, but a deeper commitment, a shared future they would build together. Yes, Olivia said without hesitation, taking the key from the box. Absolutely. Yes. Jake's relieved smile was radiant as he leaned forward to kiss her, gentle at first and then with growing certainty. I have to admit, he said when they finally parted, I was nervous about asking, even though we've been practically living together for weeks. Did you think I might say I deserve better? Olivia teased, referencing the words that had once nearly ended their connection before it began. Jake laughed, pulling her closer. The thought did cross my mind. Well, let me be very clear, Olivia said, meeting his gaze directly. There is no one better for me than you, Jake Wilson. Worn sweaters, vague job descriptions and all. I'm keeping that sweater forever, by the way, Jake informed her. It's now a treasured memento of how not to make a first impression. I wouldn't have it any other way, Olivia replied, leaning her head on his shoulder as they looked out at the night sky together. From disastrous blind date to shared home, their journey had been anything but conventional. Yet somehow, every step, even the missteps, had led them precisely where they needed to be, together, building something meaningful both individually and as a pair. What had begun with Olivia declaring she deserved better had evolved into a relationship that exceeded anything either of them could have anticipated. A partnership built on mutual respect, shared values, and a love that had grown stronger through every challenge. As they sat together under the stars, the key to their shared future warm in Olivia's hand, both recognized the precious truth they had discovered. Sometimes, what we think we deserve and what we truly need can be entirely different things. And sometimes, when we're fortunate, they turn out to be one and the same.